Go.
I'd like for us to start by imagining what an average day is like for us here at Taylor, okay? So we get up in the morning, okay, and say we start with hygiene. So we shower, we get ready, right? Maybe we have some quiet time that we set aside. So maybe we're reading our Bible, let's add that in there, okay? Then let's say we head off to classes, okay? If you have an 8 a.m., it might look something like this, right? Everyone's head is on their desk. So you get to your classes, you have lunch, you have dinner, okay? You finish with your classes for the day. Maybe if you have a sport, extracurriculars, you go and do that for a couple hours. And then basically we take the rest of our day and throw it into doing schoolwork and studying and projects, right? And the next thing you know, you look outside and it's dark out and the day's already over. Now, that's already enough as it is, but I want us to also imagine another element of it. This element of loneliness, and if you struggle with loneliness and how that could impact it. David Derbyshire, a scientific journalist, found in a 2010 study of over 300,000 people that loneliness has as bad effects on people as smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being an alcoholic. And it's actually just a little bit home for me. I had a friend who they had to drop out actually this last semester, not just because they were so busy, but because they were just so mentally struggling and lonely too. And while dropping out may seem like something that's far off from us, the U.S. Best College rankings that rated Taylor number 1, based off their retention rate percentages for us, shows that more than 1 out of every 10 freshmen here will drop out before the sophomore year. So we kind of have these two issues I want us to look a little bit more at. For being the time issue, right, with how busy we are all the time. The United States Department of Labor found in a 2016 study that full-time students spend about an average of 3.5 hours of time in educational activities, whether in class or doing like class work. Then let's say we add in the 2-hour study rule per credit hour. Most of us have 15 to 17 credit hours, so that would be 30 plus hours of studying. If you have a part-time job, I work at Menards 3 days a week. That'd be 12 to 15 more hours plus a sport, maybe if you do that, chapel. And then you have free time left over. It's uncommitted. And what do we need free time for, right? Well, it's when we're most inspired. For example, I have a friend that makes apps in their free time. It's when you enjoy your hobbies, right? If you're an engineer and a lacrosse player who loves to climb, you're not going to find much time to climb if you're so busy. And you're not going to, also socially, you're not going to find a lot of time to hang out with your friends and be around the people you love. But let's look at this other aspect, this emotional issue of loneliness, right? There's 2 types of loneliness really, social and emotional. The STEM magazine New Scientist wrote in 2017 that social loneliness is mainly determined by the strength of one's social network, while emotional loneliness has to do with the objective feelings of isolation you have, regardless of if you have a lot of friends like physically around you or not. And while this may seem kind of like not very common, statistics actually show, according to the American Health Association, of over 48,000 students in a study, that 63.1% of them throughout one school year felt extremely lonely at one point. And in the survey I conducted, a little less than half of you said that you felt lonely somewhat often in your time here at Taylor. And so when we think about loneliness, we really want to find that kind of companionship, right? A retired professor of philosophy from Kuwait University, Dr. Mitias, was reading and studying Aristotle, talking about how we're made to be social beings. And he wrote that this is because, in his 2012 book, Friendship, that this is because it is the completion or fulfillment of man and the condition of his growth and development to be with other people, right? And so when we don't have that, we're really lacking something fundamentally that we need. So in light of these 2 issues, what might be my proposed solution to them? I mean, what could theologian Charles Spurgeon, sculptor Michelangelo, and Isaac Newton all have in common? Well, they're all a bunch of old dead guys. I'm suggesting that we take some time and study historical figures. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean picking a bunch of biographies and reading them. I mean getting to know the lives and the struggles and maybe some of the work of these men. And you don't have to pick up a biography to do that. Now, how can that help these 2 issues? Well, let's break it back down again. We go back to this time issue, right? Fundamentally, all of us in this classroom struggle learning. In fact, in my survey, we all said we get stuck banging our heads trying to learn concepts. And But what better way to learn something than to have somebody who's already understood it explain it to us, or how they understood it, right? There's a famous quote that Isaac Newton wrote in a 1675 letter to his friend Robert Hooke, when he said, "If I've seen a little bit further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. If I've understood a little bit more, it's because of the people that's come before me," right? And so in a sense, these historical figures we can imagine them as like gateways. They invite us from where we're at in understanding to where they're at in understanding, and we save all the time in between that we waste every day. But it also helps us with this issue of loneliness too, right? Now they're not physically here, but they can help us deal with emotional loneliness. Just think about the words of Atticus Finch in Harper Lee's famous novel To Kill a Mockingbird, when he's talking to his daughter and he says, right, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. And that's really what we want. We want to be understood, and emotional loneliness comes when we aren't and we feel alone. But what better way to break that than to read about people who have had the same struggles and overcome them as we struggle with today? What an encouragement that could be, and a strength to help us keep living a healthy life now. To help us visualize this, I want to go back to that friend I mentioned and reevaluate their story. They had just switched to being an art major and were struggling with the concepts and mental health. And so I want to consider, what if my friend had known or could have been encouraged by someone like Michelangelo? It's actually surprising. Michelangelo wrote in a letter to his father around 1512, "I must warn you, Father, that I don't have a penny, and that I am barefoot and naked, and I suffer the worst hardships and trials." This was when he was working on one of his most famous paintings for the church. And I just can't imagine the kind of encouragement it could have been to my friend, that this person we all look up to was struggling so much mentally and financially in their work and what they were passionate about. Or what if my friend had known somebody who also struggled just learning concepts and could have learned the technique or way that that person practiced to do better in school, and maybe with that encouragement also could have added together to them staying here and being able to stay here at Taylor. But in our own lives, right, I want you to consider, the intro classes you've taken. How many names get thrown around that we just gloss over in our intro classes, right? But if we consider this kind of metaphor here I like this metaphor, blindfolded people touching an elephant, and none of them really know what it is, right? If you touch the tusk, you think it's a spear, or the side, and you think it's a wall, right? How much easier it would be if someone who wasn't blindfolded came up and just told them it was an elephant? How much easier it would be if somebody could just come up and tell us what we're trying to understand and how to understand it. And that's what these historical figures can offer us. And even in our passion areas, for me, when I wrestled, I looked up to Tom Ryan, the Ohio State head wrestling coach, who's a champion for Christ and just he still trains one-on-one all the guys on his team. And in all our own passion areas, just imagine what we could learn and what we could get from the people from the past that can encourage us, help us learn, and help us not feel so alone in the difficulties of the things that we're going through. And to wrap up, I just want to use a really practical example we all get, right? The scripture says that Christ, being human, understands our sufferings, our temptations, and all that we've been through. You don't have to say much else to really feel warm in your heart and feel like you're not so alone in the world. And so we already know that this is true from looking to Christ. And history has this plethora of other people that we can still turn to that understand our struggles, that understand the hardships that we're having, and can teach us so much and save us so much time today. And so I hope that the next time you see one of those names or you are in need, that you look back in history and find comfort in the people that have already done it.